Hello, you've tuned into the Administrator's Table. This is our first episode. Today is May 16th, 2019, and the purpose of this show is to better inform our fellow residents of Bristol of some of the ongoing projects in town. Today we have two very special guests. Many of you may know them. Diane Williamson, our Director of Community Development. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Ed Tanner, our Principal Planner for the town of Bristol. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
So today, what we want to do is we want to talk about what community development does in Bristol, what your general roles are during an average day, and then I'd like to really inform the public of some of the great projects that are happening in Bristol.
Okay.
So, Diane, could you please tell us first a little bit about yourself and how you ended up with your role here in Bristol?
Sure. So I started working for the town in 1995. They were looking for an assistant planner, and I sent in my resume, got the job, and I was promoted to be the director in 2005. The department is building code compliance. We have the building inspector, historic district, zoning, planning, basically everything that encompasses private development in the town and the permits and requirements that people would need to work with us on to get their permits for their buildings. We also do special projects. We do different infrastructure projects, which we're going to talk about today. And it's a pretty busy department. We touch almost every other department, and we have a lot of input with the residents and the citizens as they come to work on their private developments.
So your office is actually across the street from Town Hall?
Yes, we're in 9 Court Street.
Right, there used to be the old police station.
Right. Yeah, and
okay.
the cells are still in the basement.
Now, an interesting thing about community development now is you do full e-permitting now for building permits, right?
Right. We started that, I believe it was last November, and everything is online now. You can file your permits online, we'll review them online, and you'll get an email that your permit's issued. And it's been really cutting down the foot traffic in our building. So it's good for people who don't have the time to come in. They can do it all online now.
Great.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Diane, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ed, how long have you been with the town?
I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Bristol, but I've been working for the town of Bristol since 2005 as a principal planner and zoning officer.
All right, so lifelong, so you went to Bristol schools?
I did.
And played Little League?
I did.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so what's going on in Bristol, in my view, is very exciting. We're doing a lot of great things, a lot of infrastructure improvements. Let's stop by the waterfront. I know both of you were instrumental with our previous administrator getting the grant for the new boardwalk. So that boardwalk is behind the Ever-Ready Fire Station on Thames Street. Can you tell us a little bit about that boardwalk and what it means to the waterfront in the historic downtown?
Sure. It was a pivotal piece in the connection of the boardwalk. It was the missing link. We had previously done improvements to the State Street dock and then the Rockwell Park, which had also been completed. And so this was the piece that we needed to make the link between the two properties and connect the boardwalk all the way down to the Maritime Center. And Ed was pretty instrumental in getting the grant and administering the project. So maybe you can talk a little bit more.
We applied for a grant from the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management Recreation Program grant, and we were awarded the grant. And it was an interesting project because we had to hire engineering firm and contractors to build the boardwalk, but it also includes a pathway to, as you said, connect to the State Street dock with a stone pathway, and then we had to repair some old seawalls to get the boardwalk to connect to Rockwell Park.
Right, so as part of our long-standing comprehensive plan and the harbor management plan, the goal was to connect Independence Park right to the Maritime Center.
That's right.
Right to Church Street. So we've essentially done that.
That's right, and it's been great. And with the acquisition of the property next to the Ever-Ready Fire Station, we have now the town owns all of the land on the west side of Thames Street, so we could make that connection with the boardwalk.
Great.
So, yeah.
So lately there's been talk of the high-speed ferry, the Sea Streak, coming into Bristol. I like to promote Bristol as the Port of Bristol. It was one of Rhode Island's original ports, Newport, Providence, Wickford, Bristol. So with the Sea Streak now coming in on weekends, what does that mean for our waterfront? I like to envision it as a hub. You know, we have the East Bay Bike Path, we have the A&R Marine operates the Prudence Island Ferry. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for visitors that may want to come to Bristol to explore some different day trips. You know, so you can essentially take your bike on a ferry, right? And
it's free.
Yeah,
It's the
Prudence
free on
Island Ferry and
it's like $1.25 on the Prudence Ferry,
Oh,
and
it
it's
is.
free on Sea Streak.
Great.
So it's going to be awesome, and I'm really, really excited about it because they have a very successful ferry from Providence to Newport, and so now they're going to stop in Bristol. So there's capacity on the boat for I think 149 people, and I know the annual service is really, really good, and I'm very excited. The other thing that I think is kind of neat is that they've packaged a ticket with Amtrak. So if you come from New York to Rhode Island on Amtrak, you can take it to Providence and then take the ferry from Providence to Bristol. So it's opening the door for so many more visitor experiences from all over. I think it's going to be really good for the downtown, and people can ride their bike down from Providence, shop, eat, go have lunch, and then take the boat back.
Great. So how I understand it is Sea Streak will have a ticket booth at our Maritime Center, and tickets are also reservable online through Sea Streak.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So the Maritime Center, that was a neat project. It used to be the old Naval Reserve Armory, historic building in Bristol. So right now it's full service for anyone that wants to come to Bristol, a day trip, stay overnight. The harbor master is more than helpful. He has ice in there. There's showers. There's washing machines, vending machines. So we think we're going places with our waterfront, and Bristol's certainly going to be even more of a destination.
Absolutely, and the Maritime Center is really an anchor for the town on the harbor. It's such an iconic building, and you can see it when you come up in the harbor, and of course people in town know it.
Yeah.
And that was a really great project. We also got grant funding to do that project, and the students at Roger Williams were very helpful because they wrote the whole management plan, and they wrote all the meat of what we were able to use for the grant application. So it was really a good team effort there with all of them.
Right. One thing I'm totally conscious of, our downtown isn't our only area of town. It's an economic generator for our town. It is a signature part of town, but there's also the other areas which are in many cases just as lively and vibrant. Wood Street, for example. Can you tell us about the Wayfinding project that you're ready to?
Sure. We applied a couple years ago, 3 years ago, I believe, for a grant from the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation, and were awarded, I believe it was about $85,000 grant to fabricate and install, well, we had to design, fabricate, install wayfinding signs. And if you've residents or visitors who are familiar with Bristol, they've probably seen the new street signs that have gone up. It has sort of a red, white, and blue colonial look to them. We are in the final steps of getting ready to install wayfinding signage, which will bring visitors as you come into the town. It will direct you to important destinations, to our downtown, to our commercial districts, to Colt State Park, for example. Sort of the bigger destinations in town, and they will replace a lot of the sort of haphazard signage that's been put up over the years along the major roadways, and it all has a common theme. So when people see those signs, they also include downtown parking. That's an important one that we've heard from a lot of people.
You've been working with DOT to standardize, and it's been a
Yes.
very long, thought-out project.
Yes,
You
it has.
have an example, or you brought a sample with you.
Yes, I do. The sign that you see behind me is a prototype, an earlier prototype, but it's for downtown public parking. So that's just an example of as you come into the downtown, particularly along 114 Hope Street, there will be signs directing you to public parking locations. And when you arrive at the public parking location, there'll be a sign like this, obviously with the P that everybody recognizes, to let you know that that is a public parking space. So that's one example of the type of wayfinding signs that you'd see in the downtown area.
Right. In the red, white, and blue themed I like to call them the patriotic style signs.
Yep.
We're unraveling that project over a 2 or 3 year period. So every street in town will eventually sit tight, and eventually every street will have the new themed sign.
That's right. It seems that we see more every day driving through town. So, and along with our kiosks and some of our other downtown historical signage, we all kind of have a common theme with that color scheme.
Great. You know, future episodes, I like to have other departments on, talk about other projects, for example, sewer department, DPW, our police department, fire department, so on. But could you tell us a little bit about Tanyard Brook and what phase we're in, Diane, and what that means to those neighbors and residents in that area?
Yeah, so it's been a long project, many years in the making, and we just completed, or we're very soon to be completing phase 2, which is the section that went from the south side of Garfield Street to just north of Richmond Street. And there will be a third phase to that as well. But it's a really important project because the brook has been really under capacity for drainage. It's been impacting those neighbors. It's a very dense populated neighborhood. Some of the low to moderate income residents in town live there, so it's impacting them especially. And so we've been able to put in a concrete culvert to replace the old stone lined channel, make it straight, make the alignment better to get the flow through there better, and so it should really improve the drainage during the storm events that we're seeing now. So,
right. The conditions there were very bad. I believe it was 2010.
Very bad,
yeah.
very bad. And then in subsequent storms, we actually had to distribute sandbags to a lot of the properties because we knew that was going to be flooded.
Okay, so this is phase 2.
Yes.
The first phase was done a number of years ago, and that was from the outflow at Bristol Harbor to Woodlawn Avenue. Garfield Avenue.
Right.
Phase 2 is Garfield Avenue to Richmond Street.
Right.
And that's what we're about completing that now.
Right.
So
That'll be
our contractor is in restoration work now. And from everything that we know, they're going to be completed before 4th of July in June. So,
Absolutely,
and
yes.
then we're going to have to start looking for some funding for phase 3
That's
to
right.
finally wrap that project up.
Yes,
Right.
and that'll go from Richmond to the reservoir on State Street. Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Speaking of the reservoir and water, what's going on at the golf course? Can you tell us about the golf course?
I'd be happy to tell you about the golf course.
First of all, full disclaimer, I learned to play golf on the Bristol golf course as a young teenager with my brother when I was 18 holes. So the golf course is an asset to our town, I believe. It's a great course. We own it. It's a great course to learn on, even though at this point it's 9 holes. It's great to learn on. What I'd like to see is it used more by our Parks and Recreation, including our summer camp. Tim Shore has been very involved with this grant and given some input. Tim Shore is our recreation director, and we're hoping to get more youth out there and doing active things outside, outdoors, and out with nature. So please tell us about the grant we got.
Okay. Right. We received a grant last fall. It's a grant through it's called a Southeastern New England program through the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. So it's a grant that's intended for water quality, for flood control, water quality management. The golf course is a pretty unique property in that it's the headwaters of 2 local watershed areas. So most people think about Silver Creek. You'll know Silver Creek runs through the high school and down by Gutierrez School into the downtown, but it all begins at the golf course. And anybody who's walked on the golf course in recent years, I too grew up golfing there as a kid. It's a very soggy place. It's a very wet place. And a lot of the water hazards are ponds that want to be wetlands and that have been piped and filled over the years, but when the course was originally built back in the 60s. And so this grant will help us to improve the water quality, to restore some of the wetland values, but importantly, while also maintaining a playable course. So our goal is to maintain hopefully a 9-hole course. It may be in a little bit of a different configuration. There may be some shorter holes, but I think it's going to be a better course because a lot of people complain about, I was out there the other day, and my shoes were certainly dripping wet. So we can both improve water quality in Silver Creek, improve the habitat in the wetlands, and create hopefully a much better playing experience at the same time, and more of an amenity to the town.
Right.
That's our goal.
Yeah. You know, one of the goals of this program was to better inform the public and keep them up to date on what's going on. And you said we're at Silver Creek, so I'm gonna bring up the Silver Creek Bridge.
Okay.
And you know, after a number of meetings recently, I got behind the time frame of summer 2020 for the bridge closure. That was the recommendation of DOT with their engineers. We had to meet with our fire department, our police chief. I did speak to our superintendent of schools, and what the most important thing that we need to remember is the safety of our kids. September is a high traffic volume time with Roger Williams back in session on Route 136, and to create gridlock at that point in September while school is starting would not be in the best interest of safety. But the good news is, going back to C Streak, we're going to bring visitors into Bristol. Our economic development coordinator, Chris Vitale, has been working earnestly, and he's going to really try to promote our downtown businesses. As you said, Diane, 149 passengers per trip. The C Streak has been a sellout, so we're very committed to the high-speed ferry coming to Bristol, promoting it, and making sure this year it's successful for next year for our downtown businesses. So we're not going to abandon our businesses. We're going to help them as much as we can, and I think together we're going to get through this road closure, which is really needed. You know, the worst thing we want is for that bridge to be closed. So considering safety, I think the summer of 2020, we should follow DOT's recommendation and support their decision. So that's where we're at. So I'm going to go back. I want to talk about the Prudence Island dock repairs, which may affect our Prudence Island residents, Portsmouth residents, but they're welcome to Bristol. We love having the Prudence Ferry in Bristol. It's been there for many, many, many years. And we're able to secure another grant, Diane, for the Prudence Island dock. Can you tell us about the grant and the construction timeline?
Sure. So this is a grant, passenger ferry grant, because as you say, the Prudence Island Ferry docks there, and that Prudence Ferry is the lifeline service to Prudence Island, even though it's part of the town of Portsmouth. They rely on that ferry, and I know there are people who live on the island who work in Bristol, so they rely on the ferry to come here and work. And so we were really fortunate to get a passenger ferry grant to fix the sheeting and the wall of the dock, which is in pretty tough shape right now. The project is out to bid. The bids should be back at the beginning of June, and then the plan is to have the selected contractor, get all of his materials and get ready to go so he can mobilize in September.
September.
Yeah,
So right
September.
after Labor Day.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. We want to give the ferry, the ferry needs to have the room to operate,
Yep.
and so September is a good time for us to start so we don't impact their service.
Right. We're committed to our Prudence Island Ferry, servicing them. They've been, I would say, 100 years operating on Bristol.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it started with the Herzog family, right?
Right.
Again, Bristol is a port. Another thing that we are committed to, and we're proud of, is our working waterfront, our commercial shell fishermen especially. The fabric of Bristol, going back to our industrial past and our working waterfront, it's something that we are always going to help and protect, and making sure that there's room for them and they are a priority.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How about other projects in town, private projects? There's a lot of information out there, a few things like the Belvedere. Not to get into details, that's been a long, publicly debated project. But could you tell us at least where that project is, the Belvedere? That was the proposed structure that's proposed for Thames Street, Thames Estate.
Yeah, so it's the corner of Thames and State. It's proposed for 20 residential units and a restaurant on the first floor. And the project right now is pending with the zoning board for the variances that they need. The meeting is June 13th. Historic District Commission did pass it, planning board did pass it. Those decisions have been appealed to the zoning board, and then they've been appealed to court. I know planning board decision has been appealed to court. I'm not sure historic has yet, but we.
Yeah, I don't believe it's come through
but,
yet.
But so it's right now. It's going through the process,
Okay.
and we just have to let this process play out and
Okay.
And go
What
from
a-
there.
The Longfield House on Hope Street,
Longfield.
in the area of Rockwell School on Hope Street. Can you tell us where that process is and where that project is?
Yes, and that's a project that, and when people drive by, they'll know it because it's the dilapidated historic structure right now. That project just received preliminary approval by the planning board last week. It's proposed for 2 units in the existing historic structure that will be renovated, and then 8 additional units new units to be built around it. And so that that had gotten prior variances from the zoning board, and planning board passed it last week, and now they are in need of state permits. They need the DOT permit and a DEM permit. And so once they get those permits, they'll be back to.
So it's in process?
It's in process now,
Right.
yes.
And I ask these questions because in addition to these projects that we keep throwing on you, because their infrastructure is great, it's money well spent, in my view. You're also the technical help for the planning board, the zoning board, so you,
That's right.
you really,
Yeah, we staff the planning board and the zoning board, and we also are members of the technical review committee, which meets to review projects before they go in front of the planning board. And so there's a lot of work that is done with each application, and sometimes it's a little busy, especially this time of year with the springtime. People want to be out there building and getting their permits. So yeah, that's part of what we do.
Right.
And
Every building permit.
every building permit,
yeah.
soil erosion
For
permit.
zoning,
Ed does
planning.
soil erosion permit review as well. We review all the building permits, and of course,
yeah.
historic
So
district.
I talked about Wood Street earlier. And there's a special place for me, in full disclosure, for Wood Street. My mother was raised on Wood Street, and you know, we had family that worked there and so forth. But the industrial park, you know, there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen. Is it going to end up? It's in receivership now. Is it going to be another blighted property? And I'm going to have you explain where the property is now and what the incentives right now for a interested firm that would come in and purchase the property, and what incentives are there now that weren't 10 or 15 years ago.
Right.
Tell us
good.
about
Sure.
the industrial park is 500 Wood Street. Used to be the old Kaiser. Prior to that, it was National India Rubber Company, then U.S. Rubber. It was owned by Samuel Colt, I believe. Yeah.
Right.
So can you tell us what some of the incentives are now, and why we think that property is now marketable and we can put it back on the tax rolls and keep our businesses in place?
Sure, and that property, you know, it's so unique because it is the old historic mill, and it's a great area for small businesses, incubator businesses, and we're really, you know, looking forward to it getting renovated. That work has been done, but more work is needed. That is being soon to be marketed by the receiver. There are now benefits to potential purchasers through the Opportunity Zone, which
Zone,
is
yeah, it's huge.
It's very big. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a very big, awesome program, and the tax stabilization would be available.
So tax stabilization, briefly, can you explain to our
Sure.
friends out there what
Sure.
that means?
So what that means is that the assessor would be able to phase in the increased value of the assessment as improvements are made.
Right.
So you take your base value, then you add what you'd be bringing through the improvements, and then they can phase that in over a period of time.
Right.
I think it's up to 10 years, depending on how much money you invest in it. And it's nice because it gives you a predictable tax bill every year, so that you know as you're planning your projects how much your taxes will be, and it allows you to phase in that difference.
That's for businesses, right?
Correct,
Yeah,
for
so
commercial, industrial. And that's the other thing, is that this property's unique because it is manufacturing. It is, there's a good opportunity for bringing in industrial and also commercial businesses.
Yeah.
The planning board and the town council actually worked a couple of years ago to change the zone to give the property more potential for redevelopment. And so they did grant some zoning to allow a different mix of uses. So it can be industrial or commercial uses.
Right.
So, yeah.
Great. So I think there's a lot of great things going on in Bristol. We could probably talk for another hour or two, but we're running short on time. But overall, I think our businesses, are doing pretty well. I know Chris Vitale, Economic Development. He's been out to some of our manufacturers. I even understand St. Gobain is bringing a new line in to Bristol. Manufacturing is pretty hot right now in Bristol, next to the golf course. Trimac Plastics is brought a line in, I believe, from Germany. And if you drive through there, you'll see the Help Wanted signs. Carbon fiber is big in Bristol right now. But I think maybe we'll have another show and we'll have Chris Vitale on. Maybe we'll invite you back. And it's been great having you.
Thank
Forward to
you.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have for today, and we're out of time. But I want to thank all of you at home for joining us on the administrators table. Be well, and hopefully you watch us next time. Have a good day.